John Miller stood at the large window of the UES horizon, watching the stars drift by. His reflection stared back at him, a man in his mid-40s with short brown hair and a well-trimmed beard. His blue diplomatic uniform was pressed perfectly, the silver pins on his collar catching the light from the overhead panels. As Earth's head ambassador to the Galactic Council, he had overseen 3 first-contact events already. Today would be the 4th. "Ambassador, the Zaxrian ship is approaching," said Karen Liu, his chief assistant. She handed him a tablet with the final briefing notes. "They will dock in 20 minutes. John nodded, taking the tablet. "Is the welcome area ready?" "Yes, sir. Food, drinks, temperature adjusted to their comfort level. Security is in place, but not visible as you requested." "Good," John said, scrolling through the notes. The Zaxrians were a newly discovered species from the Orion arm of the galaxy. Tall, with nearly see-through skin that showed their blue-green blood vessels. They were traders and explorers, much like humans had become since joining the Galactic Council 50 years ago. What the Zaxrians and most other alien species didn't know was that humans were different from the rest of the spacefaring races. Humans had evolved as predators, hunters, fighters. While other species developed intelligence to avoid being eaten or to find better food, humans had developed their smarts to become better killers. This fact was not hidden from the galactic records, but most aliens simply didn't understand what it meant. "The security team is ready?" John asked, though he already knew the answer. "Diane Winters and Frank Collins will be in the room with you. 6 more officers will be nearby but out of sight," Karen replied. Standard protocol. Standard protocol. Meant everyone was armed and ready for trouble, though no weapons would be visible. Humans had learned long ago to hide their predatory nature. It scared the other species. So they smiled and acted friendly, all while staying ready to fight if needed. John made his way to the welcome area, a large room with comfortable seating and a view of space. The walls were painted in soft blues and greens, colors that research showed were calming to most alien species. Diane and Frank were already there, dressed in simple gray uniforms that downplayed their physical strength. Both were former Special Forces soldiers before joining the diplomatic security team. "Everything quiet?" John asked them. Diane nodded. "Yes, sir. The ship has just docked. No unusual readings or signals." "Good. Remember, the Zaxrians are highly sensitive to facial expressions. They can detect micro-expressions that most humans can't control," John reminded them. "So keep your thoughts friendly." The doors slid open and 6 Zaxrians entered the room. They moved with a flowing grace, their 7-foot-tall bodies swaying slightly. Their leader, Supreme Adjudicator Krell, had skin so clear that John could see the 3-chambered heart beating in his chest. "Welcome aboard the UES Horizon," John said, keeping his voice warm and friendly. He raised his hands, palms up in the universal gesture of peace. "I am Ambassador John Miller of Earth." Krell tilted his large head. His eyes were huge and purple, with no whites, just large pupils that seemed to take in everything. "We are grateful for your welcome, Ambassador Miller. The Galactic Council speaks highly of human hospitality. Please sit." John gestured to the specially designed chairs that would accommodate the Zaxrians' unusual height and joint structure. "We have prepared refreshments that our researchers believe will be compatible with your biology." As the aliens sat, John noticed their careful movements. They were nervous, which was normal for first contact situations. What wasn't normal was how one of the Zaxrians kept looking at Diane and Frank. "Your security personnel," the Zaxrian said suddenly. "They are very still." John smiled easily. "Human diplomats always travel with protection. It's merely tradition now." "We have studied your species," Krell said, his voice musical and light. "Your history files are interesting." "Every species has its path to the stars," John replied, pouring a blue liquid into crystal cups. "Ours had its challenges, but we found our way to peace." "You fought many wars," another Zaxrian observed. "Yes," John admitted, "but we learned from them. Each conflict taught us the value of diplomacy." He didn't mention that each war had also made humans better at fighting the next one. "What brings the Zaxrian people to seek contact with Earth?" John asked, changing the subject. Krell accepted the drink. We seek trading partners. Your location near the Epsilon trade routes would make our journeys more efficient if we could establish a supply station in your system. I think that could be arranged, John replied. Earth welcomes peaceful trade. As they discussed the details, one of the younger Zaxrians wandered toward the window, looking out at the stars. He moved too close to Frank, who shifted position slightly. It was a small movement, but the Zaxrian froze, his skin suddenly flushing blue with fear. Is something wrong? John asked, noticing the tension. The young Zaxrian backed away from Frank. His eyes, they changed when I approached. John laughed lightly. Human eyes adjust to movement, it's automatic. But the Zaxrian wasn't convinced. It was like watching a hunting animal track prey. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. John maintained his diplomatic smile, but inside he was calculating how to smooth over this moment of truth. We evolved from hunters, yes, John admitted, but we've moved far beyond our origins. Krell studied John carefully. The council records say humans are omnivores, but primarily consume plant matter now. That's correct, John nodded. Though, our bodies still carry the traits of our ancestors. No need to mention that most humans still enjoyed a good steak when they could get it. Your teeth, another Zaxrian pointed out. They are for tearing flesh. A remnant of our past, John agreed. Just like your transparent skin once helped your ancestors absorb sunlight before you developed agriculture. This seemed to satisfy the Zaxrians, and the conversation returned to trade agreements. But John noticed how the aliens now kept more distance between themselves and the humans in the room. Later, after the meeting ended successfully with preliminary agreements signed, Karen approached John in his private office. They know what we are, she said quietly. John shook his head. They suspect, but they don't understand. No species that didn't evolve as a predator truly can. Will it be a problem? No, John said confidently. They need our trade routes too badly, and besides, we're not hiding anything. Our full evolutionary history is in the records we provided to the Galactic Council. But we don't advertise it either, Karen pointed out. John looked out at the stars again. Would you want to tell a galaxy full of herbivores that you're a wolf, in sheep's clothing? We're diplomats now, but that doesn't change what we are at our core. Karen nodded. The meeting with the full council is in 2 weeks. The Zaxrians will be there. Good, John said. By then they'll see we're valuable allies, that's all that matters. What John didn't say was that humans had learned to channel their predatory instincts into protection rather than aggression. They defended their allies fiercely. They hunted pirates and slavers across the galaxy. They were the wolves who guarded the flock, and sooner or later the galaxy would understand what that really meant. 3 months had passed since the first meeting with the Zaxrians. The trade agreement was signed, and a small Zaxrian cultural team had been invited aboard the UES Horizon to learn more about humans. Among them was Vex Nal, a young Zaxrian scientist, who specialized in studying other species. Captain Laura Bennett sat in her command chair on the bridge of the Horizon. Unlike Ambassador Miller, she made no effort to hide her military background. Her short gray hair and straight posture showed her 30 years of service in Earth's space fleet. Captain, we're picking up a distress signal, said Communications Officer Lisa Grant. Her fingers moved quickly across her console as she worked to improve the signal. Source? Laura asked, leaning forward. It appears to be Mictarian, ma'am, a transport vessel. Laura nodded. The Mictarians were peaceful traders, short furry beings who had welcomed humans into their markets years ago. Put it on screen. The main screen flickered to life, showing a frightened Mictarian. His fur was standing on end, a sign of extreme stress in their species. This is Captain Zoll of the transport vessel Bright Wind. We are under attack by unknown ships. We carry only civilians and trade goods. Please, anyone who hears this, we need help. The message cut off in static. Laura didn't hesitate. Navigator, plot a course to the source of that signal, maximum speed. Lisa, alert Ambassador Miller, and inform the Zaxrian delegation about the change in our schedule. Yes, Captain, Lisa replied, already sending the message. Paul Harris, the science officer, looked up from his sensors. Captain, We'll be entering a disputed sector. The Galactic Council has limited jurisdiction there. Noted, Laura said simply. What she didn't say was that this made no difference to her decision. Humans protected their friends no matter where they were. 10 minutes later, Ambassador Miller arrived on the bridge with Vex Nall, the Zaxrian scientist. The alien's transparent skin showed his rapidly beating heart. Captain Bennett is there. A problem? John asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Mictarian transport under attack. We're responding, Laura explained briefly. Vex Nall looked confused. But this is a diplomatic vessel. Should we not call for proper military support? John and Laura exchanged a quick glance that the Zaxrian missed. The UES Horizon is fully capable of handling the situation, John said smoothly. Captain Bennett has my full support to assist the Mictarians. Laura turned to her tactical officer, Frank Collins, who had been part of the security team during the first contact with the Zaxrians. Battle stations, prepare defensive systems. Throughout the ship, lights dimmed slightly as power was redirected to the weapons and shields. Crew members who had appeared as simple diplomats and scientists now moved with military precision to their battle stations. Vex Nall watched in confusion as hidden panels on the bridge slid open, revealing additional tactical stations and weapons. Controls. I don't understand, the Zaxrian said. This is listed in council records as a diplomatic vessel. It is, John replied calmly. But human diplomatic vessels are always prepared for multiple scenarios. We're approaching the coordinates, announced the navigator. Coming out of faster-than-light travel in 30 seconds. Laura leaned forward. On screen as soon as we arrive. The ship slowed suddenly, and the main screen showed a horrifying scene. A Mictarian transport ship, its hull breached in several places, was surrounded by 3 sleek predatory vessels. The attacking ships had no markings or flags. Pirates, Frank said grimly. Scanning their weapons, energy-based mid-range capability. Life signs on the Mictarian vessel? Laura asked. Paul checked his sensors. 14 life forms, but readings are weak. They're losing air. Open a channel to the attacking vessels, ordered Laura. Lisa worked her console. Channel open. This is Captain Laura Bennett of the Earth vessel UES Horizon. Stand down your attack on the Mictarian transport immediately. There was a pause, then a harsh laugh came through the speakers. A rough voice answered, This is none of your business, human. The Mictarians entered our territory. Their ship and cargo are now ours by right of claim. There is no recognized claim to this sector, Laura replied, her voice hardening. I will not repeat myself. Stand down now. The pirate ships began to turn toward the horizon. They're charging weapons, Frank reported. Laura's face showed no fear, only cold determination. Shields up. Target their weapon systems only. Vex Nall watched in shock as the formerly hidden weapon ports on the horizon opened. The diplomatic vessel suddenly looked much more like a warship. Ambassador, Vex Nall whispered to John. What is happening? You're about to see why it's good to have humans as friends, John replied quietly. One of the pirate ships fired first. Energy beams struck the horizon's shields, which flared blue but held strong. Return fire, Laura ordered. Disable their weapons. The horizon's response was precise and devastating. Beams of concentrated energy shot out, striking the lead pirate ship exactly at its weapon ports. The ship spun out of control, its weapon system smoking and useless. The other ships are moving to surround us, Frank reported. Evasive pattern. Delta, Laura commanded. The horizon moved with surprising speed and agility for its size, avoiding the worst of the enemy fire. John turned to Vex Nall. You should return to your quarters now. But the Zaxrian stood frozen, watching the battle unfold. Your people, you fight like you've done this many times before. We have, John admitted. Humans have been protecting trade routes since before we joined the Galactic Council. On the screen, the second pirate ship tried to flee after seeing what happened to the first. The horizon pursued it relentlessly. Boarding teams, prepare for rescue operation, Laura ordered. Medical teams on standby. Vex Nall watched as Diane Winters, who had been introduced as a cultural liaison officer during the first contact, now appeared on the bridge in combat gear. She led a team of 6 similarly equipped humans toward the shuttle bay. She is security? Vexnal asked in confusion. All humans in our diplomatic corps have multiple skills, John explained vaguely. The third pirate ship suddenly broke off its attack on the crippled Mictarian vessel and turned its weapons on the horizon. A lucky shot hit one of the less protected areas of the hull. Damage report, Laura demanded. Minor breach on deck 4. Automatic seals engaged. No casualties, reported the damage control officer. Laura's eyes narrowed. Her expression changed. Subtly and for the first time, Vexnal saw something that made his blood run cold. Captain Bennett no longer looked like a diplomat or even a military officer. She looked like a predator that had been challenged. Target their engines and life. Support. Leave them adrift, she ordered. The Horizon's weapons fired again, this time with even greater precision. The pirate ship went dark as its power systems failed. Boarding teams, you are clear to rescue the Mictarians, Laura said. Security teams, prepare to secure the pirate vessels. John watched Vexnal closely, seeing the realization dawning in the alien's eyes. Humans weren't just capable of fighting when needed, they were exceptionally good at it. The ease with which they shifted from diplomats to warriors revealed a truth that the Zaxrian was just beginning to understand. Ambassador, Vexnal said, quietly, the council records say humans evolved from primates. That's correct, John nodded. But they don't mention that you evolved as predators, the Zaxrian continued. Hunters. John smiled slightly. The information is there if anyone looks closely enough. We've never hidden what we are. As they watched, the rescue operation unfold on the screen, with human teams efficiently extracting the injured Mictarians and securing the pirate vessels, Vexnal realized that the galaxy's understanding of humans was about to change dramatically. The news of what happened with the pirate ship spread quickly through the Galactic Council. 2 weeks after the incident, the grand meeting hall of the council was filled with representatives from over 50 spacefaring species. At the center of attention was Vexnal, the Zaxrian scientist who had witnessed the humans in action. They moved without fear, Vexnal explained to the council members. His transparent skin showed his nervous heartbeat as all eyes focused on him. Ambassador Miller, who hours before had been discussing art and poetry with me, personally led a team to secure one of the pirate vessels. I watched through the ship's monitors as he took down 3 armed pirates using only hand-to-hand combat moves. Murmurs spread through the large circular room. Many species shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The human delegation sat calmly, with Senior Representative Gloria Rodriguez at their center. She was a short woman with dark hair streaked with gray, but she carried herself with quiet confidence. The council leader, a tall insect-like being called High Counselor Zith, raised his 4 upper limbs for silence. This is concerning information. The UES Horizon is registered as a diplomatic vessel, yet it carried weapons that match our military-grade classifications. Gloria stood to address the council. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, we have never hidden our capabilities. Our ships are designed for multiple purposes, including defense and rescue operations. Defense is one thing, said the Floxian delegate, a blue-skinned amphibian. But your crew acted with military precision. Ambassador Miller's file lists him as a cultural expert, not a combat specialist. Gloria smiled. On Earth, many of our people train in multiple disciplines. John Miller was indeed a cultural expert, with degrees in xenolinguistics and comparative art. He was also a former member of our planetary defense force before joining the diplomatic corps. This caused another wave of worried whispers. Are you saying all your diplomats are soldiers? Asked a representative from the Volox Confederacy. Not all, Gloria replied honestly. But many have served in some defensive capacity. We believe that those who understand conflict are often the most dedicated to avoiding it. Vexnal stepped forward again. Council members, I must add that when the pirates fired upon the human vessel, something changed in the humans' behavior. Captain Bennett's expression. It was like watching a predator focus on prey. Their movements became more efficient, more coordinated. It was both impressive and frightening. High Counselor Zith's compound eyes reflected the light as he turned to Gloria. "Senior Representative, how do you explain this behavior?" Gloria took a deep breath. "Humans evolved as pursuit predators on our home planet. Our ancestors hunted in groups, tracking prey over long distances. This heritage is in our biology, in our instincts. When threatened, these instincts can surface. Yet you present yourselves as peaceful diplomats," said the Tricilian representative, his feathered crest rising in agitation. "We are peaceful," Gloria insisted, "but we are also protective. The Mictarians were being attacked. They would have died if we hadn't intervened. Should we have left them to their fate?" No one answered that question directly. Instead, the council chambers erupted in debate. Some species argued that humans had misrepresented themselves. Others pointed out that their history files had indeed contained information about their predatory evolution, though few had understood the implications. In a quiet corner of the chamber, Ambassador John Miller stood with Krell, the Zaxrian supreme adjudicator. "You must understand our concern," Krell said softly. "For most spacefaring species, intelligence evolved as a defense against predators, or as a way to find food without fighting. Very few evolved as hunters the way humans did." John nodded. "I understand, but consider this. The same instincts that make us dangerous when provoked also make us fiercely protective of those we consider under our care. Like the Mictarians? Yes. They welcomed us into their trading networks when we first joined the council. We consider them friends." Krell's large purple eyes studied John carefully. "And what happens to those you don't consider friends?" John's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened slightly. "We prefer to make friends, Krell. It's easier for everyone that way." The debate continued for hours. Historical documents about Earth were displayed on large screens around the chamber. Images of ancient human hunters with spears, medieval warriors in armor, modern soldiers with advanced weapons, but also doctors healing the sick, engineers building homes, teachers with children, the full spectrum of human capability and contradiction. During a break in the proceedings, Gloria found herself approached by a small group of Mictarians. Their leader, Trade Minister Pick, bowed slightly. "Representative Rodriguez, my people wish to express our gratitude for the actions of the UES Horizon. Without their intervention, our transport and all aboard would have been lost." Gloria smiled, warmly. "We're glad we could help, Minister Pick." "Some on the council fear you," Pick said quietly, his fur rippling in the Mictarian equivalent of a shrug. "But we have traded with humans for many years now. We have always found you to be fair, partners and strong defenders." "Thank you for saying so," Gloria replied. "It means a lot coming from you." When the council reconvened, the mood had shifted slightly. Minister Pick took the floor. "Honorable council members, my people have known humans for over 20 standard years. Yes, they are different from most of us. They come from a world where they evolved as hunters. But in all our dealings with them, they have used their strength to protect, not to threaten." Several other species voiced similar experiences. The Banari mentioned how human ships had helped evacuate their colony during a solar storm. The Lorians spoke of human doctors working tirelessly to fight a plague on their homeworld. As the testimonies continued, Gloria watched the faces of the council members. Some remained suspicious, but others were beginning to understand. Humans were indeed predators by evolution, but they had channeled those instincts in new directions. When Gloria spoke again, her voice was firm and clear. "Members of the council, we didn't hide our nature from you. Our complete evolutionary history was in the files we submitted when Earth joined the galactic community. Yes, we evolved as hunters. Yes, we can be dangerous when provoked, but we choose to use our strength to defend those who cannot defend themselves." The Draconian representative, a tall reptilian being with scales that shifted from green to red, with his emotions, stood suddenly. "Pretty words, Representative Rodriguez, but the fact remains that your diplomatic vessels are armed like warships, and your diplomats fight like soldiers. Would you prefer we were helpless? Gloria asked calmly. Unable to assist when pirates attack innocent traders? I would prefer honesty, the Draconian replied. If you are warriors, present yourselves as warriors. We are not just warriors, Gloria said. We are scientists, artists, builders, healers, and yes, when needed, we are fighters. We are all of these things together. That is what it means to be human. As the council session ended for the day, no formal decision had been reached about how to respond to this new understanding of humanity. But the conversation had started, and the galaxy's perception of humans had begun to shift. Back, aboard the UES Horizon, John Miller watched the stars through the window of his quarters. Karen Liu entered quietly. How did it go? She asked. As expected, John replied. They're afraid of us now. Not all of them, Karen pointed out. The Mictarians spoke in our favor. So did others. John nodded slowly. Yes, those who know us. Best fear us least, that's something at least. What happens next? John turned from the window, his expression thoughtful. Now we show them that predators can also be protectors, that the same instincts that make us dangerous to our enemies make us valuable as allies. Outside, the stars continued their slow dance across the void, indifferent to the political upheaval happening among the tiny beings who traveled between them. The galaxy was changing, and humanity's place in it would never be the same. A month after the council meeting, tensions in the galaxy had grown worse. The Draconian Empire, a powerful group of reptilian species who controlled 3 star systems, had been watching humans with growing concern. They had built their power through military might and fear, and they did not welcome another predator species in their territory. Ambassador Richard Young sat in his office on the Galactic Council station, reviewing reports from Earth. Richard was younger than John Miller, with light brown skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had replaced John as the lead human ambassador after the council requested a change in diplomatic staff. A soft chime announced a visitor. Richard looked up to see his assistant, Nancy Powell, enter the room. Nancy had been a tactical intelligence officer before joining the diplomatic corps, though her official title was now cultural liaison. Sir, the Draconian representatives are requesting an urgent meeting, she said, her face serious. Richard nodded. When? Now, sir. They're waiting in conference room 3. Richard stood, straightening his gray diplomatic uniform. Any idea what this is about? Nancy handed him a data pad. Our sources suggest they're unhappy about the new defense agreement between Earth and the Mictarian Trade Alliance. That was a standard protection arrangement, Richard said, scanning the information on the pad. Nothing provocative about it. The Draconians seem to disagree, Nancy replied. Richard took a deep breath. The defense agreement had been a direct result of the pirate attack. The Mictarians had asked for human protection on their trade routes, and Earth had agreed. It was a simple arrangement that benefited both sides. Let's go see what they want, Richard said. The walk to conference room 3 took them through busy corridors filled with representatives from dozens of species. Richard noticed how some moved aside as he passed, watching him with new wariness. News of humanity's predatory nature had spread quickly through the station. Inside the conference room, 3 Draconians waited. Their leader, High Commander Shrek, stood as Richard entered. Shrek was tall, nearly 7 feet, with dark green scales that shifted to red around his neck and face. His yellow eyes had vertical pupils that narrowed as he watched the humans approach. Ambassador Young, Shrek said, his voice a low rumble. Thank you for meeting on such short notice. High Commander, Richard replied with a polite nod. How can I help the Draconian Empire today? Shrek did not waste time on further pleasantries. Your defense agreement with the Mictarians crosses into territories that the Empire considers under our protection. Richard kept his expression neutral. The trade routes covered by our agreement are in neutral space, as recognized by the Galactic Council 50 years ago. Circumstances change, Shrek said, his scales shifting slightly toward red. The Empire has expanded its security interests. Expanded without council approval? Richard asked mildly. The other two Draconians shifted their weight, a sign of agitation in their species. Shrek's tail twitched once, then went still. The Empire does not need permission to protect its interests, Shrek said. We are informing you of the situation as a courtesy. Richard recognized the threat behind the words. The Draconians had been the dominant military power in this sector for centuries. They were not used to being challenged. I appreciate the courtesy, Richard said carefully. But the agreement with the Mictarians has already been filed with the Council. Would you like me to arrange a three-way discussion with Mictarian representatives? That won't be necessary, Shrek replied. His scales were now fully red around his neck, a sign that Nancy recognized as aggression. We are delivering a formal notice. Earth must reduce its fleet presence in the outer sectors and place its diplomatic corps under draconian supervision or face consequences. Richard blinked slowly, the only sign of his surprise. That's quite a demand, High Commander. May I ask what prompted it? Your species has revealed itself as a threat to galactic stability, Shrek said bluntly. You hide warriors among diplomats. You arm peaceful vessels with military weapons. The Empire cannot allow such deception to continue. Richard maintained his calm expression. We have hidden nothing. Our nature was always in our records. Yet you present yourselves as peaceful diplomats while building a military presence throughout the sector, Shrek countered. The Empire sees the pattern clearly. We are peaceful, Richard insisted, but we are also prepared to defend ourselves and our allies. Shrek leaned forward slightly. You have 2 standard days to agree to our terms. After that, the Empire will take whatever steps it deems necessary to protect galactic security. With that, the Draconians left the room, their tails swishing behind them in perfect unison. Nancy waited until the door closed. That was an ultimatum. Yes, it was, Richard agreed, his mind already racing through options. They're afraid of us. With good reason, Nancy said quietly. They've built their power on intimidation. We don't intimidate easily. Richard tapped his communication device. Get me a secure line to Earth Command, and find out where the Mictarian representatives are. They need to know about this immediately. That evening, as Richard conferred with Earth leadership via encrypted channel, Nancy was monitoring the station's air security feeds. She had set up small programs to track unusual movements throughout the diplomatic sector. What she saw made her stomach tighten. Sir, she interrupted the call. Draconian special forces are positioning themselves throughout the station. At least 20 operatives moving in pairs. Richard nodded without changing his expression, continuing his conversation as if nothing was wrong. Yes, Admiral. I understand the fleet positions. Please continue. When the call ended, he turned to Nancy. They're preparing to take hostages. It seems that way, she agreed. They're focusing on access points around the human quarters and key communication nodes. Richard's face remained calm, but his eyes had taken on the focused look of a predator. How many of our people are on the station right now? 17 diplomatic staff, plus 32 support personnel, Nancy reported. Send the Nightfall. Code, Richard instructed. No comms. Use the personal devices only. Nancy nodded and tapped a sequence into her wrist unit. Throughout the station, every human would receive the same simple message. Nightfall protocol active. Time, 3 hours. Nightfall. Protocol was something all human diplomatic staff trained for regularly. It meant potential hostage situation. Prepare for quiet evacuation or defensive positions depending on the circumstance. 3 hours later, when the Draconian Special Forces made their move toward the human quarters, they found their targets, already gone. Not only that, but every strategic point on the station, the communication center, security office, and docking controls, had been quietly secured by human diplomatic security personnel who had moved with silent efficiency. The Council security forces found themselves facing a standoff. The Draconians, caught in the act of what appeared to be a planned hostage operation, were surrounded by armed humans who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Richard stood in the station's control center, watching the security feeds as the Draconian operatives were peacefully disarmed and detained. How did you know? asked High Counselor Zith, who had been awakened by the alert. We didn't know for certain, Richard admitted. But we recognized the pattern. The ultimatum was never meant to be accepted. It was meant to distract us while they positioned their forces. The insect-like counselor's antennae twitched in what might have been admiration. Your people moved like a coordinated hunting pack. We did, Richard acknowledged. There was no point in denying it now. And if the Draconians had not attempted this operation? Then we would have quietly strengthened our security and continued negotiations, Richard said simply. High Counselor Zith studied the human ambassador. The Council has misjudged your species, I think. We saw your predatory nature as a threat. We failed to consider how such instincts might be channeled toward protection rather than aggression. That's a common mistake, Richard said with a small smile. Predators aren't always monsters. Sometimes they're guardians. As dawn broke on the artificial day cycle of the station, news of the failed Draconian operation spread quickly. The galaxy's perception of humans was changing once again. They were predators, yes, but predators who had learned to use their hunting instincts for more than just killing. They hunted threats. They protected the weak. And now, everyone knew it. 1 year had passed since the Draconian incident. The galaxy had changed in ways few could have predicted. After the failed hostage attempt, the Draconian Empire faced severe sanctions from the Galactic Council. Their influence had weakened, creating a power vacuum in several sectors. Into this vacuum stepped a new alliance, the Interspecies Protection Accord. Started by Earth and initially joined by the Mectarians, the alliance now included 12 different species who had come to value what humans brought to the table. Admiral Peter Summers, formerly Ambassador Summers, stood on the bridge of the U.S. Guardian. The ship was the flagship of the new joint peacekeeping fleet. Peter was tall with dark skin and gray at his temples. His diplomatic uniform now replaced with the blue and silver of Earth's fleet. Admiral, the Mectarian colonial fleet is requesting an escort through the Veil Nebula, reported his communications officer Lisa Grant. She had served aboard the Horizon during the pirate incident and had requested transfer to the Guardian when it was commissioned. Intelligence suggests Draconian raiders in the area, she added. They're not officially sanctioned by what remains of the Empire, but they're using Draconian ships and tactics. Peter nodded. Set course to rendezvous with the colonial fleet. And alert our Zaxrian allies. They have ships in that sector that can assist. Yes, sir, Lisa replied, sending the message. Carl Owens, now a lieutenant commander and tactical officer, looked up from his station. The Zaxrian vessels are responding, Admiral. They can meet us at the nebula entrance in 6 hours. Peter smiled. Slightly. A year ago, the idea of Zaxrians and humans working together would have seemed unlikely. Now it was routine. Very good, Peter said. Let's make sure those colonists reach their new home safely. As the Guardian changed course, Peter walked to the observation deck where a small group of alien representatives were gathered. Among them was Vex Null, no longer just a scientist, but now the Zaxrian ambassador to Earth. Admiral Summers, Vex Null, greeted him. The Zaxrian's transparent skin showed his calm heartbeat, a stark contrast to the nervous racing Peter had seen during their first meeting. Your ship moves with impressive speed. We've made some improvements to the engines, Peter replied, but I'm more impressed by how quickly your pilots have learned to fly in formation with ours. Vex Null's skin flushed with a light blue color, a sign of pride in his species. We are adaptive and we have good teachers. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars streak by as the ship traveled faster than light. A year ago, my people feared yours, Vex Null said finally, when we realized what humans truly were. Predators who had learned to hide their nature. Many thought war was inevitable. Peter nodded. It was a reasonable fear. Throughout your evolutionary history, predators meant danger. Yes, Vex Null agreed. What we failed to understand was that predators could also be protectors, that the same instincts that make your species dangerous to your enemies make you valuable as allies. On another deck of the ship, a training session was underway. Human security officers were teaching combat techniques to a mixed group of aliens, Mectarians, Zaxrians, Benari, and others. Leading the session was Diane Winters, now Chief of Security for the Guardian. The key is to use your natural strengths, Diane explained as she demonstrated a defensive move. Mictarians, your reflexes are faster than humans. Zaxrians, your reach is longer. Benari, your sense of balance is superior. Work with what evolution gave you. The aliens practiced in pairs, their movements becoming more confident with each repetition. None of them had evolved as predators, but under human guidance they were learning to defend themselves and others. In the ship's conference room, a strategic meeting was taking place. Representatives from all 12 species in the protection accord were discussing the growing problem of piracy in the outer sectors. The power vacuum left by the Draconian Empire has led to a 30% increase in raids on civilian shipping, said the Lorian representative, a tall avian being with bright plumage. Our combined fleets can't be everywhere at once, added the Benari diplomat, his blue skin glowing softly in the room's lighting. Richard Young, now the human high representative to the Accord, listened carefully before speaking. Then we need to change our approach. Instead of reacting to attacks, we need to predict them. How? Asked the Mictarian Trade Minister Pick. Richard smiled. By thinking like predators. He stood and moved to the large star map displayed on the wall. Pirates, like all predators, follow patterns. They target the weak. They establish territories. They follow regular hunting routes. The other representatives watched with growing interest as Richard outlined a new strategy based on predator-prey dynamics. It was a way of thinking that came naturally to humans but was revolutionary to species that had evolved as prey or peaceful gatherers. We don't need to be everywhere, Richard explained. We just need to be where they're going to strike next. As the meeting concluded, the various representatives left with a new understanding of how human thinking could complement their own approaches to problems. Back on the bridge, Peter received word that the Zaxrian vessels had arrived at the rendezvous, point ahead of schedule. They're eager, Lisa commented with a smile. They're learning, Peter replied, and so are we. The Guardian joined the Zaxrian vessels, their combined force presenting a formidable defense for the Mictarian colonial fleet. No raiders appeared, the sea. Presence of the Protection Accord ships was enough to deter any attacks. As the colonial ships safely entered the nebula, Peter thought about how much had changed in just 1 year. Humans had stopped pretending to be something they weren't. Their predatory nature was now acknowledged openly, but so was their commitment to using that nature to protect rather than to threaten. That evening, Peter hosted a small dinner in his quarters for the senior staff and key representatives. The food reflected the diverse biological needs of the attendees, with special care taken to ensure nothing that resembled prey for one species was served to another. I received a message from Earth today, Peter announced as the meal concluded. The Council has approved our proposal for a training academy. Beginning next month, we'll be accepting cadets from all member species. Will the training include combat techniques? Asked the Benari representative, who had once feared human aggression but now saw its value. Yes, Peter confirmed. Along with diplomacy, science, engineering, and medicine, we believe in balanced education. Vexnal raised his glass in a gesture. He had learned from humans. To the Academy, may it teach the best of all our species. Everyone joined the toast, the diverse group united by a common purpose. The Protection Accord wasn't perfect and challenges remained, but it represented something new in the galaxy. A path where predator and prey species could work together, each contributing their evolutionary strengths. Later, as the gathering dispersed, Peter stood at the observation window watching the nebula's swirling colors. Carl Owens joined him quietly. Quite a view, Carl commented. Yes, Peter agreed. A year ago, many of these species wouldn't have trusted us enough to turn their backs on us. Now they serve alongside us. They needed us, Carl said simply. Peter shook his head slightly. Not exactly. They needed what we could teach them about standing up to bullies, and we needed what they could teach us about building trust. As the Guardian continued its mission, escorting the colonial fleet through the dangerous nebula, the crew, human and alien alike, worked together with growing understanding. Humans no longer needed to hide their predatory instincts behind diplomatic smiles. Instead, they had found a way to use those instincts to create something new, a galaxy where strength was used to protect, not to dominate. The day the galaxy realized that humans were apex predators pretending to be diplomats had come and gone. In its place had come a new realization. Sometimes, what the galaxy needs most is a predator who chooses to be a guardian.